Well, hey everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to tonight's Friday Night Mike. Going live from the front porch. We'll see how this goes. Hopefully this wasn't a mistake. Hopefully this goes well. There won't be any cars honking or neighbors coming out, shaking their fists, saying, "What are you doing, you nutbag? Why are you talking so late on a Friday?" Well, it's Friday night, right? There's no school tomorrow. Tells me, and I have to hit the reject button as we start this. Sorry, Jennifer. We're gonna have to call you later. Call you back later. It's almost 9 o'clock, and I've got a lot to talk about tonight. This was a busy week, right? So busy doesn't necessarily mean productive, unfortunately. Kind of doing some camera adjustment as I go, get myself centered. The beginning of the broadcast, one-man crew, some interactive stuff with you. I had tonight, the crew, we did one of the, what do they call that? Like a virtual happy hour, I guess. So we all kind of got on a conference call, and basically I kind of got taken to school on like what's in, what are the good movies, what are the good craft beers, good restaurants. I feel like, I don't know, do y'all ever feel like that when you're listening to your coworkers and everybody just seems, they all seem cooler than me? Like, I'm just like, have you tried this? No, I haven't tried that. I haven't been there. I haven't seen that movie. I haven't read that article. I just kind of sat there quietly like, wow, I'm really not in. I'm just too whatever. I too dialed into Georgia football, my exercising, my Friday night, my Sunday night. Like, I don't know. I haven't done all of the cool stuff. Like, I know what I like, and that's like what I do. Now, that's not to say that I don't try new things. I do. It's just been a minute, right? I mean, I've been quarantined. I haven't been out circulating, do all this different kind of stuff. So yeah. So it was cool to listen to their ideas. It was cool to hear the things that they've done, some of their ideas, some of their recommendations for movies. But I kind of felt like, you know, the square peg and and everybody else was cool and up to date, and I wasn't. So what I am up to date with, though, is some fun stories. I want to share this one. If you haven't read this story, it's really more of a video. You kind of got to see it. So I'll tell you the story, but I strongly suggest you read the article. It's on our Facebook Live page. You can see it. It's the one where Kirby Smart loses it. Like, I've never seen Kirby Smart just laugh out loud, lose it, until I saw this video. And I got to give CBS some credit for this. They had a video going with Kirby. They bring in Will Muschamp, who everyone knows, Kirby's friends with Will Muschamp. His son is a walk-on quarterback on the Georgia football team. And so the interview starts out and they're saying, well, Kirby, you've got Jackson Muschamp, you got Will Muschamp's son on your team. Are you concerned that maybe your playbook gets into the hands of, and he goes, no, there's a lot of paranoia out there, and I'm not a paranoid coach. And I'm going, Kirby, yes, you are, because you have the most restrictive practice policies ever. And this is where everybody goes, Mike, we don't care how much you practice, the media gets to see. Well, since this is Friday Night Mike, I get to share and complain about that. We don't get to see enough practice. So there, I've complained about it. But anyway, I just thought it was ironic. Kirby goes, I think that paranoia is overrated. I'm like, okay, sure. That's why you don't let anybody into your practices. Whatever. But so they bring Muschamp on, and this is where it gets funny, right? So Muschamp, they're like, Will, you're right there. What do you think? Well, he can't talk. He doesn't hit his, when you've done the video conferencing, you got to hit the unmute button. How many times have you started talking and you don't hit the unmute button, or you've got a coworker and it's their turn to talk and they don't hit the unmute button? And I did it a couple times. Jeff Santel's been the unmute button guy for us, just so you know. Calling you out there, Jeff. But Muschamp hasn't hit. Kirby jumps on Muschamp. Look, he can't get it to work. Oh, this is great. He starts laughing. Boy, you guys got to run this part. He's loving watching his buddy Will Muschamp have a technical issue. So Kirby's enjoying this thoroughly. And then Kirby brings up, we've heard all this about Nick Saban and his issues with technology, and here it is, that's Will. So boom, Muschamp finally punches in. He's able to talk. And Muschamp, he doesn't worry about Kirby, right? Like, he's not worried about Kirby. He jumps right into the story about Nick Saban and how when they were at LSU back 2001, 2004, how they had everything digitalized. So when they would want to call up a play from practice, all they had to do was punch the play. It was called Exos. and it was computer digitalization. It really sped up teams' ability to scout. I mean, there was a time when coaches would watch VHS tape, and then it was beta tape. Well, apparently Saban was very slow going from beta to digital, or he had this security thing where he wanted to know when Muschamp would call up a play, he'd say, well, is it rewound yet? And Muschamp said, I tried to explain to him, it doesn't rewind, coach. Finally, he just told him, yeah, it's wrong. And Kirby's laughing about this. And Kirby's like, yeah, I used to have to carry all these beta tapes to the meetings because Saban was worried the digital computer wouldn't work. And it was just funny to see Kirby laugh out loud and have just that much of a gut-busting laugh. I've not seen that from Kirby. Kirby has been wound so tight. He's so intense. He rarely smiles. And so I enjoyed that. And see how Muschamp could loosen him up. You know, in Muschamp, you talk about intensity on the sideline, but you can tell Will Muschamp is the kind of guy that you'd want to have a beer with. Or in my case, everybody knows what I'm drinking, right? A green tea with. Particularly on Friday Night Mike. So some exciting news. Right now, I am tentatively scheduled to have Mark Richt on next Tuesday. That'd be like 12 to 1 on the beat, sponsored by Ingles. Tentatively scheduled. Coach Richt wasn't able to do it last Tuesday. Has tentatively agreed to go this Tuesday. So that's going to be cool if I can get former Georgia coach on Tuesday. And if you guys have some questions you think would be good for Coach Richt, you can put them in the comments here. I know when I talked with Coach Richt in New Orleans, I talked to him on 2 occasions. So I saw him. He was there for the ACC network, obviously, and Clemson was there. And he was on stage, and I pulled him aside, and I said, hey, tell me about Jamie Newman, the Wake Forest transfer, because Coach Richt watched the entire ACC season. He said, loves this guy, will probably be the best quarterback in the SEC, can fit into any offense. So I thought that was pretty cool. You know, Coach Richt giving me that breakdown. I also said to him, because I'm thinking to myself, you know, I wonder what Rick thinks about Georgia now. I mean, now that Georgia's getting this $81 million football building, right? What do you think about the facility? He said, I think the facilities are great. Love it. You know, couldn't be happier. And, you know, he said, look, there's teams I root for. I root for where he went to college, Miami. He's got friends. You know, he was at Florida State. And he still roots for Georgia. I mean, you meet Mark Richt, and we're talking about all these different coaches. What do they really like? Because the sideline demeanor and the coach you see during the game, I mean, that'd be like talking to a surgeon during an operation or something. They're going to be intense. They're going to be dialed in, not who they are away from the operating table. The same is true with coaches, right? These guys have charisma. They have a great sense of humor. There's a reason they're powerful figures. There's a reason they're influential enough to be able to recruit and command these incredible salaries, right? They're dynamic people. They're dynamic personalities. They're good people. Mark Richt is good people. And Georgia fans, you need to know that. And I know that, you know, so many times people get so wrapped up in wins and losses and do you get us a title? And listen, that's what we're paying for. But understand this. Your coach represents not only your school, but oftentimes your state. And there's a responsibility that comes with that. And I don't know of anybody that did as good or better job, really a better job. I can't think of anybody that did a better job as an ambassador than Mark Richt. So I want to say that. And I think he won a lot of games, and I do think he's a Hall of Fame coach. I've heard people, how can you say he didn't win a title? I look at his winning percent, very comparable to Philip Fulmer. Very comparable. Philip's got a national title. Coach Richt doesn't. But you look at the number of SEC championship game appearances. You look at where Coach Richt brought the program. He left it in a very good place for Kirby to advance the ball. And I think Kirby's done that. I know some people say, well, let's take a look. You know, they're basically the same guy. Well, yes and no, numbers-wise, but no facilities-wise. Kirby's moved the needle for the donors to get the facilities to get Georgia caught up. That's what Kirby Smart's done. Now, has he gotten over hump, won a national title yet? No. Is the window closed? No, it's not closed. But anyway, I wanted to start out with that because I thought that story, that video, and again, if you haven't seen it, go to Dog Nation or just check out the Facebook feed. You can see the link to it. And it's pretty fun. So give me a minute now because I'm going to share this Facebook Live onto my page, a couple different pages that I'm doing. And the reason why is because I want to get, like our Dog Nation page, man, like we've got every Georgia fan. Every Georgia fan is already a member of our page. So the Georgia fans are watching. But I'm going to talk more about where college football is at And I think this is something that would appeal to some different audiences. So I'm going to share it to my personal Facebook page and let people take a look there. I can't type and talk at the same time. Is that bad? So whenever you call in and you give somebody your credit card number, you go very slow, right? So I'm slowing down because I'm trying to share this to a couple of pages. So forgive me for being slow for a second here, but I will pick up speed here in a moment. It's awkward. I don't like silence. I know when you broadcast, it's okay to have silence. Some people do it for effect. I'll be doing, the Feinbaum show, and I'll say something. I was on there earlier this week, and was it Tuesday or Wednesday? Wednesday, I can't remember. Tuesday or Wednesday night. And it's tougher when I'm not on video. When I got on video, I can use my hands, and I can make faces, and I can get my point across so much easier. But when it's just my voice, it's a little bit harder, right? The comprehension level. I think it's easier to watch and tune in and listen when I'm looking at the person than just when I hear their voice. I get more sensory, right? There's more my sense. I can watch and I can kind of see the mannerisms and the body language. But when you're just on the phone and it's two voices, I don't know if Paul's making faces, and the audience, because it's just his screen's up and I'm talking. Anyway, I went through this whole scenario about, so then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And then there's a pause. So I'm on the phone, and did I lose a connection? He goes, why am I confused right now? I said, I don't know. I thought I went through it pretty good. I don't know why I find, but the pause, right? That's Paul's way of jabbing me. I guess I didn't do a good enough job explaining it. So tonight, when I talk about where it's at, I'm going to try and go kind of slow to explain it. I want to start out, not that slow, I want to start out with some NBA news, and here's why. Because all of the sports are dealing with the same hurdles with COVID-19 or coronavirus or whatever you want to call it. Everybody is dealing with the same challenges. And so it behooves us to pay attention to see how the NBA is dealing with this. And there was a conference call today with the NBA Commissioner, Adam Silver, and some things that came out of that. One thing that came out of it was that there were 2 NBA teams today that opened up their facilities for voluntary work, voluntary spaced out, Portland and Cleveland. So we've got to start now. We got 2 NBA teams that have their buildings open for voluntary social distance work done. You got to start somewhere, right? In America, we got to start somewhere. I know they're playing baseball. Was it Korea, Taiwan? I can't remember. I didn't watch it. But you got to start somewhere here in America. And the fact that the NBA opened up 2 facilities is a first step. So, apparently, Silver and this lady named Michelle Roberts, who is the director of the Players Association, they broke this down 3 ways. And, we've heard the SEC talk, we've heard the college football talk, we've heard the NFL talk. So how does the NBA approach it? They say science, psychology, and politics, okay? That's their three-pronged attack here. The science is in the form of better data in terms of how infectious COVID-19 is, how to prevent it, how to treat it, and what the potential fatality rate is. Look, they're not hiding. They're throwing it out there. They're saying, hey, what's the potential fatality rate if we adjust it for the NBA population? All right, let's get right to the point. That's what the NBA threw it out there. Let's face it, that's what we all wonder. Are we going to get sick or is it going to kill us? Let's just say it. That's the elephant in the room. Not going to the game if it can kill me. Might go to the game if it gives me a cough. What are the odds, right? Everybody has a different risk tolerance. Getting back to the NBA plan here. The psychology of it, right? So what does each individual feel his or her risk is, and weighing that against competitive and economic pressures to return. You go, that sounds just like me and my job. Heck yeah, I want to go back to my job. Heck yeah, I want to travel. Guys, I like to travel. I like to fly around and see recruits. At this time last year, I was in South Florida, or getting ready to go to South Florida to meet with Lawrence Cager and Kenny McIntosh in their hometowns or in their apartments and talk Georgia football. They were signees who hadn't reported. Loved getting on that plane. Love landing at the airport. jumping in a rental, driving to the house, setting up the camera, right? But now you look at each one of those as a hurdle. Like, well, there's the airplane flight. Well, then there's the rental car. What's the hotel like? And then I'm in somebody else's home. Have we all been tested? There's hurdles everywhere. So people have to weigh those risks. And the professional athletes, they're not going to be any different. Professional coaches, for that matter. What if there's a 68-year-old NBA coach? How at risk is he, right? Are those millions of dollars that he's going to make as a coach going to be worth him if he's in a risk group as a 68-year-old man? These are questions. You remember back, I said at the beginning of this that I thought we would see some coaches retire. We've seen a couple coaches retire. I'm not going to throw their names out there, but you can look in women's basketball and see a pretty major coach that retired. And I think you're going to see more of the older coaches retire and say, you know what? I might make $7 or $5 or $10 million a year, but what good is that if I have a potential, if I'm in this high potential fatality category with COVID-19? Now, to me, that's a little overboard. I'm still very optimistic that by the time the season starts for college football in September, that we're going to be further along. I'm still betting on U.S. technology. I'm betting on our doctors, our scientists. I'm betting on our researchers. I'm still believing in that. I'm still saying we're going to get through this. We've been through it before. The Spanish flu, 100 years. We've been there. Our country is built on achievers. You think about these people. I don't want to sound like a history teacher here, but think about this. These people that traveled across the country in covered wagons, do you know what they dealt with? I'm not saying COVID-19 is not a killer. It's a heck of a killer. But when I look at our forefathers and how this country was founded, and yes, I may sound a little patriot, but that's how I feel, man. I'm proud of our country. So I'm optimistic about it. I know not everybody is, and I respect that other people have different points of views, but I'm a very optimistic, and as I told you from the beginning, I'm a very mission-oriented person. My military training kicks in, right? My psychology does. Like typically, I'm the guy that tries to cover every base and worry about everything. But right now, that's not how I feel. Right now, I'm just shooting straight and thinking about what my job is and what I need to do and how do I do it best amid these circumstances. That's my mentality. I ain't got time for worry right now. Because if I started to worry about every little thing, I'd have a nervous breakdown because there's a lot to worry about. So focus on the task. Getting back to NBA talk. Politics. They brought up the politics of this. The league and the teams have to work hand in hand with their communities and their local government. We've seen it from state to state to state. There's different policies in place, right? Some states are still shelter in place. Some states are open. Here's what I say. It should be that way. And here's why. Because one size doesn't fit all. Okay? New York is very different than Georgia, which is very different than Iowa, which is very different than California. And once you get inside of those states, there's huge differences. It's different for Metro Atlanta than it is for rural Georgia. Now, that's not to say it's that COVID-19 is any less, but it's not as widespread. So the NBA and college teams, they have to work within their guidelines of their local government. So you could call it a complication, you could call it a hurdle, I call it a reality, right? So you've got to be operating within the bounds of what your state government tells you, or your local government tells you, or the federal government. In this case, though, it boils down to the states and what the states are asking you to do. So when we talk about going back, and I'm using the NBA as a barometer, I'll go back and cover that real quick. You got the science of it, the infection rate, and the death rate for NBA players. Go ahead and apply it to college players. You got the psychology of it, people weighing risk-reward. Man, I really want to play, but there's a danger there. Well, do you want to play bad enough to take the risks that we all have a different risk rate, right? Okay, confession time. I used to be afraid to fly. I was a beat writer at Alabama, lived in Mobile, Alabama, and I was afraid to fly. I would drive everywhere. My boss thought I was crazy. We'll fly you there. No, I'm driving. I'm driving to Bristol, Tennessee. I'm driving to Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm driving to Orlando. I'm driving to Tampa. Drive. Don't want to fly. And then I get the job, 1998, Tennessee beat writer, and I look on the schedule, and the first game is Syracuse, and they say, yep, we all travel together, and I go, I guess I've got to get over my fear of flying. So I read the book. Yeah. All right, now I understand the dynamics of this. I'm not afraid to fly anymore. I understand the science behind it. That's what I told myself. I'm going to get a window seat. I'm going to look at the clouds. I'm going to anticipate turbulence. I still look at the turbulence forecast before I fly so I can go, yep, probably pretty turbulent about halfway through the flight. I'm not going to get nervous. I expect it. And then the person says, well, turbulence has never caused an airplane to crash. I go, that's right. I read the Fear Flying book. So anyway, risk reward, right? I wanted that job. I had to overcome the fear of flying. Now, if I end up dying in a plane crash, he said, well, you probably shouldn't have taken the job or taken the risk. But the reality of it is there's risk in everything we do. And there's risk in what we don't do, right? I can't just sit in the house and be a couch potato and keep saying I'm scared. I'm going to miss opportunities. I'm going to miss opportunities to advance my career. I'm not going to be able to do my job as effectively. We all have to weigh it. We're all going through the same thing, man. All going through the same thing. And all that this NBA commissioner is doing is putting it in black and white. And people are reading it like, wow, like I said, they're looking at the death rate. That's interesting. So anyway, another point that the NBA commissioner made, and again, this translates to college football, 40% of the NBA league revenue comes from attendance. I think that's fascinating, right? So the NBA is working on different ways to get these broadcasts on television, and they're preparing to have no fans in the arena for the next year or without a vaccine. Now, where's college football with this? The NBA is saying no fans in the arena without a vaccine. I'm hearing college football people say, well, if everybody wears a mask, that's 99% effective. I'm hearing Georgia say, well, we're working on a lot of different scenarios, and one of them is 6 feet apart in the stadium. It's going to be interesting to see what each league does. And there's different pressures on all these leagues. Look, they all need money. Right? I mean, everybody's used to their life. These NBA players, these guys have pretty exclusive lifestyles. They don't want that. They want to cash that check. And in colleges, these budgets are heavily reliant on college football money coming in, whether that's ticket sales or whether that's television contracts. I can tell you at Georgia, between ticket sales and television contracts, you're looking at almost $89, $90 million. That's pretty substantial out of a $150 million budget. And then you got to figure in, if another $44 million comes from donations, how much does it hurt your donations if there's no football season? So we're probably talking about at least, I'm guesstimating, $120 million out of a $150 million athletic budget could go right down the tubes with no football season. So you wonder, what's forcing these decisions or what's encouraging these decisions? So earlier this week, Les Miles, we're all familiar with Les Miles, used to coach at LSU. People say, oh, haha, he ate grass. Listen, the guy's got like an engineering degree. His brain moves twice as fast as everyone else's. And so sometimes these really super smart people say or do really silly things. I'm not one of those people. You don't need to worry about it. But I think Les Miles and Jim Harbaugh are two of those people. But anyway, Les Miles says, hey, yeah, we're going to have a season. So that's the key. And now it's just a matter of how do we bring him back safe. So I said, okay. Les Miles, like he's letting the cat out of the bag, like it's a foregone conclusion, says there's going to be a football season. So I'm good with that. I'm down with that. So here's the scenario, okay? This is what I tried to explain on Feinbaum and didn't do a very good job with, apparently, because he said he was confused. So, Paul, if you're watching, this is just for you. So, start of the process. NCAA Oversight Committee. The NCAA's got committees for everything. This bears paying attention to. They are advocating a 6-week period before the start of the season. So if we're going to assume that college football is going to try and start on time at the beginning of September, let's work backwards from the beginning of September, 6 weeks, and that puts us in the middle of July. So that's step number one. The NCAA has a core principle chart for re-socialization. What is re-socialization? It means everybody getting together again. It's like the kids I'm seeing out in the street, they're all playing together. They're already re-socialized. When I went up into Athens and I saw the kids wanting to get their picture taken under the arch that just graduated, bless their hearts, they didn't have a graduation ceremony. They were re-socialized. They were not social distancing. They were doing the re-socialization thing. Everyone was together and talking, and there weren't a lot of masks. So the NCAA core principle for re-socialization says 2 weeks. I take that as like 2 weeks of like essentially the quarantine that George has put out there, right? So 2 weeks of getting back together, seeing how it shakes out, seeing if there's a spike, seeing if there's any cases. And that goes hand in hand with a proposal that Georgia's one of the many proposals that Georgia came out with, and that was bringing all the coaches and players back on campus and quarantining them on a hotel that's on campus for 2 weeks. That would be their re-socialization, right? And if you did that in the middle of July, that would set you up to start fall practice on August 1st. So again, this is plan A. This is not guaranteeing, this is not saying, by gosh, this is what they're going to do. Look, we're all in the wait and see mode. I don't know about you, but I look at COVID-19 numbers every day. I say, okay, how many cases in my county? How many deaths? I look around the nation, right? We're all scoreboard watching on COVID-19. But if the trend continues to go down, then this is where we could be in an optimal situation. Schools report back middle of July, quarantine players and coaches. The buzzwords, I've been told by a very good source, the 3 buzzwords that we're going to hear is testing, tracing, and treatment. Okay, so to me, that's what kind of the buzzwords are. Everybody's going to get tested. When there's someone that tests positive, they're going to trace it quickly and quarantine those people, and then the treatment. And these things are all going to be affected by the advances in science and medicine over these next 2 months. It's really incredible when you think of how far and how fast things have already come. Again, I'm waving the flag here, but I'm just amazed at how our leaders and our country has responded. You know, I get on Twitter. Listen, I'm on Facebook. I got the same Facebook friends you do. You know, the sky's falling. We need to have someone impeached. We need to have this. We need to do that. We need to vote for this. Listen, to each their own on your political persuasions. But to me, right now is not the time for that. To me, the time is for unification, and let's all pull the same in. That's where I'm at, and I think that's where I'm seeing these sports leagues at, right? You're not hearing anybody bicker. You're hearing different ideas, and you're hearing other athletic leaders being tolerant of one another, trying to learn from other people's ideas. But there are some differences around the. So here's a little bit of a change from what we heard a couple of weeks. Well, it was actually 3 weeks ago. So 3 weeks ago, the conference commissioners had this teleconference with Vice President Mike Pence. Remember that? And what came out of it was there needs to be kids on campus before we can resume football. That's what came out of it. And we went, oh my gosh, how is that going to happen? Because on April 15th, it didn't look like anybody was going to agree with anybody. Think how far we've come since April 15th, right? But anyway, that was what was said. You know, hey, you got to have people on campus. Now, all of a sudden, they're backpedaling a little bit. So Bob Bowlesby, the Big 12 commissioner, says you could have, and he said this in a, where did he say it? He said this in a Yahoo article. I want to give Papa credit here. He said that you could have 100% classes online and still have college football. So that sounds a lot different than kids being on campus. Even Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, who I believe has been the foremost leader in all this, who I believe has delivered the clearest message, who I believe if there was going to be an NCAA czar of football, it would be Greg Sankey. And not because he rules with an iron fist, but because he listens to his people, his constituents, and he comes up with the idea that pleases everybody. He works for the league. He works for the different schools. And I think Sankey does a great job of taking everybody's ideas and getting everybody on the same page. Look at Monty Rice. Look at this Georgia. These guys want to play ball. If you don't know who Monty Rice is, he's Georgia's middle linebacker. He's a tough guy. He's a team leader. He's a smart guy too, though. He wants back on campus. These guys want to play. So anyway, now they're saying kids can take online classes. And here's what Greg Sankey said. I thought this was interesting. I assume we'll have more distance learning or web-based learning that was happening anyway. So they're going, well, you know what? We were going to have more online classes anyway. So we don't really need to have them in the classroom as long as they're signed up and taking classes, because that makes them student athletes, right? Well, let's face it. If you saw the national championship game and Joe Burrow, if you wondered what it looked like if you put an NFL quarterback on a college team, all you needed to do was watch LSU, because that guy didn't go to class for 2 years. He was a graduate student. So he was able to do his graduate classes online. I'm sure it was very trying on Joe Burrow. I'm sure he really sweated through. Let's be real. Different schools require more from their students. There's a saying at Georgia. They want to be Harvard Monday through Friday and Alabama on Saturday. And these kids, they got to go to these tutorial centers. They got to go to these classes. They get checked up on. And if they're not there, they get in trouble. They get suspended. They got to run. This is serious stuff, man. So now we're saying, you know what? Maybe we should cut these guys a break. Let them do a little bit more online learning. You think so? I think so. So the fact that Sankey is acknowledging that now, that there may be more distance learning, and he even said there was a time 10 years ago when leagues would work against that. They were more concerned with the distance learning, and now all of a sudden they're saying maybe online. Look at what a team captain Monty's telling us that's academics first at Georgia. Monty is a good student. I like to hear that. That's a healthy approach. So I want to get to some comments here from E. Gordon G., who was talking to Yahoo. He is the West Virginia president. And he says, and I think this is true, there's a battle going on between science, politics, and common sense. And up to this point, science has won, and rightly so. But he said we need to start finding the middle ground and manage those middle grounds. He said, I think there's a larger issue of managing the virus rather than letting it manage us. That the mental health of the nation needs to be served. So I think that's pretty interesting. So yeah, we want to make sure that everyone's healthy. Yeah, we want to make sure it's safe, but safe now involves some degree of risk. And we don't know that. Okay, that's where it's very inexact. That's where it's blurry. That's where the lines get blurred. What is safe? Well, safe depends on your risk tolerance. You know, there was a time when I was 18, 19, and 20, when I jumped out of airplanes in the 82nd Airborne, and I thought it was pretty safe. Well, of course it was safe. I would go through all the proper procedures. I had a parachute on my back. I had a reserve. I trusted those Air Force pilots. They were some of the best pilots in the world. I knew that they were going to drop us over relatively level land, so that was pretty safe. You might go, you're nuts. It's not safe to parachute. It's never safe to parachute. But right now, back then, I thought it was safe. Do you ask me if it's safe now? I don't know that I think a roller coaster is safe. I've seen too many movies. Or the Ohio Fair a few years ago when the ride broke. You know what I'm talking about? And now that I'm older, I've seen more. I go, oh, no, that's not safe. But when I was 18, 19, 20, I hadn't seen a whole lot of life. It looked safe to me. Plus, I got to wear this really cool beret to work. That was pretty neat. So, fans in the stands, right? So we've talked about different approaches from the NBA to the college schools, what different people are saying, how the narrative's changing, how the message is changing. Yeah, you want students in class. Well, but maybe they don't actually have to be in class. Maybe they just have to be online now. Okay, yeah, that's it. Or, now all of a sudden we're saying, well, maybe they can come back a little early for this re-socialization period. Maybe we won't suspend all activity. Right now, currently, per SEC, all activities on campus suspended until July 31st. But now we're talking about scenarios where maybe that's not the case. Now, Greg Sankey told 24/7 in an interview today that all things are on the table and they've got 15 to 20 different scenarios. So it's still wide open. The right answer for these leaders is still, I don't know. But for the fans, we don't want to hear, I don't know. We want to hear scenarios. We want to hear possible solutions. That's why I'm throwing them out. I think this is fascinating. This is an unprecedented time in our history, folks. And we're trying to figure it out. And we're doing a lot of brainstorming. And it changes every day. It's a moving target. The COVID-19 numbers change. The advances in medicine. The laws from state to state. The ideals and the structure and the provisions that are in place. Constantly evolving, amoeba-like fashion. So the show that I might have done, last Sunday night, talking about, you might go, boy, these are some different, in 5 days, it's changed that much. And you know what? By the time I come on Sunday night and talk to you, there's going to be more changes. And by next week, there's going to be more. But one thing that did come out today is we're starting to get a timeline. Remember Greg Sankey said, well, the great thing about this is we don't have to have any answers right now. And there's no reason to make decisions before you have all the answers. Clearly, you want to have all the information possible before you need to make your answers and your rules. And today, Mark Emmert in a USA Today article said that by the middle of June, we got to figure something out. So now the clock is running. Now we're talking about 5 or 6 weeks where these leaders, they got to kind of figure it out. Where we are right now doesn't matter. Next week doesn't matter. Where are we going to be the first, second week of June? How far will this progress? Or will it regress? So far here in Georgia, and again, I'm not a pandemic expert. I haven't studied all the states. But so far here in Georgia, it's been somewhat promising. Now, listen, I don't want to make light. I want to be very clear on something. While I'm an advocate for moving forward, and you can clearly tell I'm an advocate for college football resuming, I don't want to make light of what's going on. I got a former friend that went through this, okay? 3 weeks ago, I got the message. I'm not going to say his name, but it's a buddy of mine from my little hometown in Michigan. They said he's in the hospital. He has an accelerated heart rate. 3 days later, this guy was on a ventilator, man. His kidneys were shutting down. His heart was operating at 25%. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm never going to see this friend again. They started a Facebook page. They kept us informed. They moved him to this different unit. 2.5 weeks later, this guy walked out of the hospital. Now, there's still some kidney issues, as I understand. But my point is this, not to sing the praises of the Sparrow Hospital in Lansing, although they certainly deserve a call out, not to express my heartfelt feelings and hopes for my friend in Mason, Michigan, but to make the point that, I was one of those people that said, I don't even know anybody that's had it. Well, guess what? I know somebody that's had it. It's pretty real to me. This guy just as healthy as I am, man. You know, it can happen. So I want to be clear that I'm not making light of that. When I speak optimistically, when I talk about moving forward, understand that's just how I'm operating. I'm mission oriented. Again, that's my persuasion. So if you feel differently, I want you to know that I respect that. And I'm not making light of different people's opinions or this horrible virus. I want to be very clear on that. Because sometimes, I could see where somebody could go, look at this guy. He's just all rah-rah, 100 miles an hour forward. Look, I understand there will be risk moving forward. Okay? But I also understand that there's risk if we don't move forward. And that's just kind of where I'm at. Trying to put all that together like the NBA, like the college conference leaders. We're all dealing with it. Sports is a microcosm of society. Listen, I'm in sports because I didn't want to do news. Why are you a sports writer, Mike? Because I didn't want to be a news writer. Because there's enough tough things in the world, right? That's why when I go to the movies, I'm going to comedies or action. People go, don't you want to go to this drama? It's about this guy and he loves a girl and somebody dies. It's like, no. Stop it. I don't want to see it. There's enough of that in the world. I would much rather watch like the Sled Dogs cartoon movie than a movie drama. I want happy, right? I want positive, or I want action. I want to be thrilled. Y'all seen Extraction? Now that's a thriller. I could deal with that. Okay? There might have got a little bloody here and there, but it was so unrealistic. You're like, that wouldn't have happened. Anyway, that's just kind of where I'm at with that. So, where are we at here? I kind of have this little... fans in the stands. So, on fans in the stands, the Oregon governor said Thursday that she didn't anticipate fans in the stands until October. Here's her quote. Large gathering, including live sporting events with audience, concerts, festivals, and conventions will not be able to return until we have a reliable treatment or prevention like a vaccine. That's in line with what the NBA said. The Oregon Health Authority is advising that any large gathering, at least through September, should either be canceled or significantly modified. To my knowledge, Oregon has not canceled their game with Ohio State yet in September. I do think what she said, the takeaway from me is significantly modified. Here's another step towards no fans in the stands. And this was my buddy Jeff Calkins, good friend of mine, that did an interview with a man named John McCullers. And John McCullers is the Associate Executive Dean at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center's College of Medicine, an expert on influenza and pandemics. And here was what McCullers said. You're not going to have spectators in Neyland Stadium this year. Boom. Wow. Wait a minute. This guy is on the UT task force, and he comes out and says, this is a pandemic expert. You're not going to have spectators in Neyland Stadium. He says that's just not going to happen. Whether people want to think it will or not, it's not going to happen. The question is, do we play football without spectators? And as McCullers explains it, he believes that that's going to be left up to the individual conferences. Now, no fans in the stands. I'd rather not have college football. Make sure my volume is turned up here. Hope you guys can hear me all right. My earbuds went dead there, so hopefully you're still hearing me all right. Listen, I think football without fans in the stands is better than no football at all. I think the television revenue, again, I think the SEC split was about $44.5 million. Now that doesn't help Southern Miss. I believe the Conference USA revenue split is $440,000. Okay, at Georgia and the SEC, it's $44 million. Big difference. The Power 5 schools, or the Autonomy 5 schools, as Greg Sankey refers to them, they're going to be in a lot better position with just television revenue. It's still not ideal, all right? I wrote a story and I quoted, there was some information on a newsletter that was sponsored by Learfield IMG, and I believe it was that 41% of the Power 5 schools, the big schools, only 41% have a reserve fund. Of that 41%, I would be willing to bet you that only 10% have enough of a reserve fund to sustain not having football in terms of still having all these other programs going. Because football is the engine that drives the revenue train. That's why everybody keeps talking football, football, football. I mean, the Georgia numbers, football made $73 million last year at Georgia. Basketball made about $3 million. Right? You might say, well, don't forget, they lost the NCAA tournament revenue. That was only going to be about $3 million. Doesn't even hold a candle to the value of football and what football makes. So thought that was interesting. You got the Oregon governor throwing that out there. You've got the UT associate executive dean and pandemic expert saying no fans in Neyland Stadium. But then you got the Alabama athletic director, Greg Burns, saying the other day, he referenced, there was a picture, and I don't know if you saw this, Tony Barnhart ran a picture. Tony Barnhart, Mr. SEC, former AJC writer, certainly one of my role models, one of the great journalists of all time, certainly one of the best college football writers in history. But Tony dug up a photo of fans at a Georgia Tech game sometime between 1918 and 1921, and everybody's wearing masks, right? And that's like created some hope. Like people like, well, look, 100 years ago, 100 years ago, I think we're a little further along. And I'm not saying it doesn't going to work, but what Greg Burns said was this, in terms of Alabama and having fans in the stand. He said, I know how much our fans care about our university. I bet you we're going to adjust. I bet you there may be some inconvenience, but we'll figure it out and try to support. I think that's the attitude we're going to have moving forward. He kind of compared it to the clear bag policy and how, if you'd have told his wife 15 years ago that she couldn't bring her purse, she would have flipped out. But now everybody's gotten used to clear bag. Can everybody get used to masks at games with social distancing? I suppose. My thought on how it looks is boosters in the skybox. Boosters are major donors because skyboxes are kind of viewed as private property, right? Like when we were looking at the alcohol and sales issue, remember before last year, none of the SEC schools could sell alcohol in the general admission part of the stands, right? So there was this monumental ruling that the SEC was going to leave it up to the schools to decide what they wanted to do, and provided they followed these 12 or 14 provisions with selling alcohol in the stands. But prior to that, alcohol could only be found in the boosters in the skyboxes. Well, I kind of feel like that's a precedent for this. Like they view the skybox as private property. So I think the donors and the skybox people are in. I also think that they will make provisions for the college students, because one thing that everyone loves about college football is to see the students there. Now, sometimes they don't fill up the student section. Sometimes they're up a little late the night before and they don't quite make it. Or sometimes they might want to leave a little bit early and head to the fun spots or whatever. But you're still going to have students there. You got to have the band there. To me, I want to fight for the band. Nobody's talking about the band. The band, to me, got to be there. We got to have the band. There's some issues that we're looking at right now. Touch on one last thing. So yesterday, we do this what we call Cover 4 at Dog Nation, where it's myself, Brandon Adams, Jeff Santel, and Connor Riley. And we go over these what-if scenarios. And I'm not sure it was a good idea because people got pretty fired up when he started saying, well, what if Justin Fields hadn't left Georgia? And we got it. What if DeAndre Walker doesn't get hurt till they beat Alabama? So the what-ifs were fun for us, but I think all we did was give all the Georgia fans a major headache. Like, guys, we don't want to know what if. Move the heck on. The future is through the windshield, not the rearview mirror. Kirby Smart told you, don't get beat twice by the same loss, right? I've given that advice here in life. I think back on mistakes I've made. I got regrets, but then I go, you know what? Kirby says don't get beat twice by it. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. Learn my lesson, move on. So the Cover 4 what-if game was fun. If you're interested, you can see it on our website. It got a little heated. I'm not going to lie to you. I think people might have got a little irritated with one another. I'm not going to say who, but I think I might have upset somebody. I know that's hard to believe. Sometimes my opinions can do that. They really can. I know that's hard to believe. But I might have upset some. In fact, this was hard to believe. So I was talking about Tennessee's recruiting class the other day. And, listen, Tennessee's got a lot of momentum. I covered Tennessee. That's like 16 years of my life, right? I've covered Alabama. I've covered Auburn. I covered Tennessee. I covered Michigan State. Now I'm at Georgia. People go, man, you jump around a lot. I go, have you checked your coach's resume? This is what happens in sports. You get opportunities and you move. I'm in a good place now. Every move's been a move up. And I don't mean necessarily because it's one school or another. I mean because of the company. I work for Cox Enterprises now. Let me tell you, there's no other company that I would rather be working for right now. And this company's been unbelievable. That's a whole nother topic. But I'm just going to tell you, as I sit here, I'm blessed to be a part of Cox Enterprises. And you can talk to people that work for that company. They will support that. They will tell you what a great company this is. But anyway, I got to talk about Tennessee. And Tennessee's excited. Listen, here's the thing. Tennessee's going to get more commits this weekend. They've got 18 now. 18 guys are verbally pledged and promised that come December or February, we're going to sign. That's what they're saying. They got 18 of them. Georgia's got 7. Alabama's got 3. Those that don't follow recruiting go, wow, that's great. Those that do follow recruiting goes, wait a minute. Alabama's only got 3? Okay, so what's going on there? Because we all know Alabama and Nick Saban, they're always ahead of the curve. So's Kirby. Kirby's only got 7? Okay, so here's the deal. If you're Tennessee, you need to be a little bit more aggressive right now. You need to take more pledges. You need to make more offers. And kids right now are more willing to commit. Why? Because they're not out there making visits. They're all a little nervous. Am I going to get an offer? Right? Tennessee comes along. That's a pretty doggone good offer. I'm going to tell you what. Real good offer. It's not quite Alabama. Man, it's not Georgia. But it's pretty doggone good. So they got a lot of commitments right now. And they've got this momentum built. And the hope is, we're taking a chance by taking all these guys. But if we create enough momentum, maybe we'll land some big fish because they'll get on board with what they're doing. They'll say, look at this, Tennessee's turning it around. So they're playing the momentum game. Georgia and Alabama are sitting back going, we want to evaluate these guys a little bit more. We want to know a little bit more about this guy. And we're confident that come October or November, when we decide that we want that guy, we can pick up the phone and say, I know you're already committed, but now we're coming in with an offer. Where would you really rather be? So that's kind of the gamble. And so I mentioned this because when I looked at the average rating of the Tennessee players that are committed, it's actually just a smidgen lower than the class they signed last year, which you go, well, Mike, that was number 10 in the country. And that's great. It was, but it was number 7 in the SEC, and that's in the middle. That's not to say Tennessee won't get a lot of great players. It's not to say it's going to get a lot worse, not to say it's going to get a lot better. It's just the way it is, and all I was trying to do was qualify that. And out of the woodwork came all the haters, all the people with the fake. Remember, I talked to you. I always talk to you guys about my Twitter problems. You guys are going, why do you even stay on Twitter, Mike? Why do you listen to them? I can't help it. They get on my timeline and they say bad things like this and how much I love the. And here's a clip from when Paul Feinbaum asked you after 5 games if Butch Jones would be fired, and you said you didn't know. I didn't know. Why didn't I know? Because the athletic director didn't know. Because I talk to him every week. So when he says, you got to have an opinion, my opinion is I don't know because I don't know what direction they're going to go. What I did know was that Butch Jones needed to win out after the Kentucky game, and so I wrote a story on that. But that wasn't enough. Because I wasn't a part of the lynch mob saying Butch Jones should be fired, that meant that I loved him. And so that comes out on Twitter. Oh, here's the guy that loved Butch Jones. No, here's the guy that gave Butch Jones credit for what he did do, which was back-to-back top 25 seasons, which hadn't happened in like 10 years, and being ranked in the top 10. That's not bad. I didn't think. 2017, disaster. But again, people didn't want to hear that. You tell people something they don't want to hear, shoot the messenger, man. And Twitter is a great place to do it because you don't even got to leave your real name. You don't even got to have a real screen name. You can be anybody and just blindly attack. And it's this mob mentality. And boom, they came after me. So that was my exciting week. So now, what about yours? I'm going to take a look and see if y'all have any comments, thoughts, observations. Eric Kemmert saying, college football fans getting their feelings hurt. I know, right? It comes with the turf. I mean, listen, I do have a pretty thick skin. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt my feelings. I got feelings. You know, I got to look at after a day on Twitter, I got to look at myself in the mirror that night and go, I like me. Kyle Folds talking about the recruiting class at Tennessee, says 12 of 18 are 3 stars. Listen, Tennessee, I've got the tip. Tennessee's going to get some big time commits this weekend. I heard they might get a quarterback. So if you think that Vol fans are going to pipe down, you don't know them very well. They're excited. They've won 6 games in a row. And I said this on Twitter. Tennessee is a team to take seriously. All you got to do is look at the first half of that Georgia game last year. I'm sitting there going, wow, Tennessee came to play. Remember the first half? Now, Georgia responded with probably their best half of football the second half of that game at Neyland Stadium. But in the first half, Tennessee was playing some ball, guys. Pruitt knows how to coach. And Fulmer knows how to build a program. And they have spent a lot of money to bring a lot of big-name coaches in there. And Jim Chaney knows how to run an offense. I know Georgia fans are going to go, oh, my gosh, did you? Yes, he does. He is very good. And Ansley is a good coordinator. He worked with Jeremy. Now, they got a lot going. They got T. Martin. They got Jay Graham. I'm just telling you, as Tennessee builds depth, I think Tennessee is every bit the threat that Florida is. I know Georgia fans hate Florida more than anybody, but I'm telling you, Tennessee's the team that's going to sneak up on you. You know where Florida is. You got the game circled on the calendar. You know your guys are going to bring it, right? They bring it every week. The way the Georgia players look at it, they take every game serious because they don't want to be a roller coaster, right? But they can't help themselves. Georgia guys hate Florida guys. It's a high school thing. And the Florida guys that are on the Georgia team, there's a reason they're not at Florida. So there is some passion. There is some dislike there between Florida and Georgia high school football. It's very real, a very real thing. I'm telling you, though, Tennessee's the team. It's going to sneak up Kentucky. They've been there. They had a cup of tea. They're not at the big person table anymore. They're back at the little person table with Vanderbilt and Missouri for now. Tennessee, Florida, Georgia. That's where it's going to be decided this year. November 14th. It's going to be the same night as the Masters, Saturday round. It's going to be a night game. I can already see it. The college game day set is going to be set up at Augusta National. Maybe they'll helicopter Kirby. You know, Kirby's going to get the Kirby copter. He's going to fly over there and do the pregame show. Maybe he'll even hit some balls with his driver because Kirby can golf. If there's one thing other than football is everything to Kirby. Kirby is brain football. You can see it, right? But he likes golf too. So I got to believe Kirby Smart's going to find a way to be there at Augusta National that morning of the game. And he'll just, well, it's recruiting. Got to get out there. Got to get out there and recruit guys. I'm sure Kirby, don't you think Kirby plays Augusta National? Don't you think so? I think he does. I played it once. I'll tell that story. So I was working at the Anniston Star. It was 1994. I was there 2 years. This was my first SEC job. And covering Auburn, I had that Auburn 11-0 1993 season. And this paper was fabulous. This Anniston newspaper was the greatest paper ever. I did desk work, I did layout, I did agate. We were an afternoon paper. I'd go cover an Auburn game, basketball game on a Wednesday night. I'd drive back 2.5 hours through some forest and be back at the office at 6 a.m. because I was, 27, 28 years old, and I could just go. We would cover Atlanta Braves games. I covered Maddox and Smoltz and Glavine, interviewed those guys. and I covered Augusta National. That was where I would meet John Adams of the Knoxville paper, who would hire me down the road. So you made connections, right? But I'm at Augusta National. So here's the first mistake I made. The pimento cheese sandwiches. They were complimentary. And, you know, there's enough sports writer in me that if there's free food, you can tell. I mean, I've been working out, okay? But if there's free food, I'm kind of a sucker for it. Even if I know, I'd never had a pimento cheese sandwich. I probably ate 5 or 6 of them. So you can imagine how I felt later that night. So that was mistake number one, was just going crazy on the pimento cheese sandwiches. Had great interviews, interviewed Greg Norman, interviewed his wife. Thought that was interesting. Why hasn't the Shark won Augusta National? Went and saw, why didn't Nick Faldo have any fans? Nobody liked him. Why not? Did a story on that. Jose Maria Olazábal won the tournament over Tom Lehman. Lehman in the khaki pants. So that was the era. And then they have this media draw, which, what do you mean media draw? That's right. They draw, I can't remember how many members of the media, maybe 50, because there was 800 to 1,000. They draw 50 names. I got drawn to play Augusta National, except I didn't have any golf clubs. So I had to borrow clubs from this guy named Gary Clegg. He was a columnist for the Columbus Ledger. What Georgia fans know Gary. He's been around long enough. Georgia fans know exactly who Gary Clegg is. He's one of the best columnists in the South. So I borrowed Gary's clubs. The problem was the grips were shot. Well, I wasn't much of a golfer. So I went to the practice round the next day, and I hit balls for about an hour and a half. And by the time it was time to play, my hands, like you've heard hands bleeding, they really were. And I'm not a good golfer. And so that was a bad mix. Now, I did notice at Augusta National, if you hit a worm burner off the tee, you get about 130 yards on it because everything's mowed really short. The fairways are incredibly short and the rough is short. The other cool thing, if you're a bad golfer at Augusta National, is if you get off the course, all the trees are mature, so the limbs are really high. So it's not as hard to punch out or over the fairway that you're hitting over when you're on somebody else's hole because you're a bad golfer like me. When you hit into the azalea bushes, the good news is the course is typically closed the rest of the year. So they're a little bit more tolerant. And my rule always was, if it was a golf club off the course, then you could hit out of the rough. So I did hit out of some azalea, but I did. That happened. And the score was bad. They tried to encourage me to stop because my hands were bleeding. But I think they really wanted me to stop because I was awful, and there was no way. And so that's how I played Augusta National. But honestly, it kind of broke my spirit because after that, I just was like I don't deserve this. There's much better golfers who've invested more time and practice and energy into being golf. I really don't deserve this. And now that I've done this, what else is there? So that was it for me. That was it for me for golf. I said, you know what? I've been a golf writer. I do the golf course reviews all these years. After playing Augusta National, you're like, well, that's it. There's nothing better than that, right? So that's my Augusta National story and my Aniston story. And I'm not even sure how we got there, but that's kind of what Friday Night Mike does. I drink my green tea. I look at comments. Nothing but green tea. See, look, William Gleaton, you lucky SOB. I shouldn't have told the story. Now I'm a lot less likable. Like, people really don't want to hear that. Like, you played Augusta National? Sorry. I guess I shouldn't have told. Yes, I am lucky. Listen, man, I'm very lucky. The places I've been and the things that I've done, I'm very fortunate. I'm not going to deny that. I'm fortunate to be sitting right here, covering Georgia, talking to you all on a Friday night show on Facebook Live. I mean, I wouldn't have thought about doing anything like this before this crazy pandemic hit. But the truth of the matter is, there's only so much content to be generated as a writer. Now, we found a pretty cool story tonight. If you missed the start of the show, if you want to see Kirby Smart bust a gut, laugh out loud like I've never seen Kirby lose it, you need to read that story about Will Muschamp talking about Nick Saban not wanting to go with the digital film, thinking it was like tape, and can you rewind it? And Will's trying to explain it's digital, coach. We don't got to just hilarious. Great stuff. Look at Eric saying, I'm going to have a concrete bulldog before you know it. So here's the joke on that. My neighborhood is probably 33% concrete bulldog. This is like a Georgia thing. Like in Tennessee, you see that orange flag and the T, right? You know, at Michigan State, it's the Spartan head. In Georgia, they got these concrete bulldogs they sell, and some of them are just that big, and some of them are that big. And people put these giant bulldogs out in front of their house, or on top of their mailbox, or at the front of their driveway. And it's like the concrete bulldog. It's not a flag. They don't do the Georgia flag thing. They do the concrete bulldog. And that's like, and so I counted them. Like I do a lot of walking, run, walk, jog, whatever, trying to get the steps in, I'm trying to, like I told y'all, like I challenged y'all, I want to come out of COVID-19 pandemic isolation better than when I went in. So I'm exercising more than I ever have. Well, maybe not more than I ever have, but more than I was before. Because we need a good YMCA here. Can I have a minute to complain? This is a really small complaint. I complained earlier about practice and Kirby having a restricted policy. I know you don't care. That was just me venting. I want to vent. Athens has a terrible YMCA. It's the worst YMCA ever. I'm disappointed in it, but I think I know why. It's because they play in Florida every year in Jacksonville. And if they kept the money here, they'd have a better YMCA. And I'd have a better pool to go to and a better workout place. All right. So anyway, back to the bulldog. So I walk around, and I just said for fun one day, let me count these. I wonder, man, let me count the bulldogs in the different neighborhoods. So I would challenge you to do that. On your next walk, go out and count the bulldogs. And tell me on my next show how bulldog is your neighborhood. Here in my neighborhood, it's about 30%, 3 out of 10. I did have a neighbor tell me, Mike, there's one you can't count because it's a Mississippi State bulldog. And they're right. I looked at it. It looks different than the Georgia bulldog. The Georgia bulldog, pretty much all red and white. But this Mississippi State, it's disguised. It's just solid brown. It's bronze. There's nothing Georgia about it. But these Mississippi State people, they sneak into your neighborhood and think they can put their bulldog out there and you won't notice it. But my neighbor noticed it and we flagged it. So that does not count as a Georgia bulldog. Oh no. There's also an Arkansas person. And I can tell because that's on their license plate and they have like a wooden sign. They probably bought it at Walmart. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know Walmart was founded there. So I'm thinking Walmart probably made a lot of these Arkansas like wooden things. Like sometimes you'll see them next door, they'll say welcome or, cheer. This one says Arkansas. So we got an Arkansas, we got a Mississippi State bulldog. I think the other people, if they're Alabama, they're probably laying low. They don't want you to know. They don't want to get cast out. They don't want to be cast outs in the neighborhood. It's kind of like that. And isn't that part of the fun of it? Right? Isn't that kind of the fun of the SEC? Is you people go, well, what do you look at me? Like, how neutral is this? I did the reverse thing, by the way, so you agree. Sugar Bowl. There's not a team there. Huh? Not a team. In fact, I got blue on tonight. That's because 80% of my wardrobe is blue. Because that's what matches. And I'm not very I'm not much of a style monger. But I know that if I wear blue and khaki and black, I'm safe. So, what else do we got here? Rob Gordon says, I live in Columbia, South Carolina, and for some strange reason, I'm the only one with a concrete. Rob, what do the South Carolina people do? They got the Gamecock. What do you do with that ugly thing? Is that not like the ugliest mascot in the SEC? The South Carolina Gamecock? It's the ugliest one out there. I feel sorry for him. You got to wear a G. Take a look at some of your comments here. Friday night, Mike, winding down. I got a little bit of green tea left. As long as there's green tea, I'm good. A lot of antioxidants. See, Kyle's another one with the concrete bulldog. If you don't have a concrete bulldog, you better get one. Let's just be real. You better have a concrete bulldog. If you are a Georgia fan and you don't have a concrete, I'm not going to say shame on you, but now you've been told. Now you're on the clock to get the concrete bulldog. You want to represent? You want to be a real bulldog? I should start a concrete, we could make money on this. I'm endorsing concrete bulldogs. There's going to be a run on concrete bulldogs, right? There's been a run on weight benches and toilet paper. I'm creating a run on concrete bulldogs right now. Just like on Saturdays when everybody's at Lowe's and Home Depot. You know how long it took me to get grass seed? I'm just trying to get grass seed. I can't even get in the store. There's so many people lined up on the weekends just to grow grass. I don't even like to garden. I'm just trying to be responsible with my time and say, you know what? Could use a little grass. Grass doesn't grow easy down here. This clay's tough. It's not like Michigan. Boy, Michigan, you go out, you could sleep in the grass and it's so green and soft. You go to sleep. You don't even need to put a mat down in Michigan. Then again, it is cloudy about 60% of the time, and it's only sunny for about 3 or 4 months and warm. So that's the price. I guess, come to think of it, if the trade-off is to be that cold and not see the sun, I'm going to take the shorter, harsher grass every time and get the grass seed. What do we got, folks? What questions you got for me? It's 9:59. We're about to wrap up. Do you have any more questions? Do you have any more comments? We've covered a lot of ground tonight. It looks like we're having some fun between the commenters. That's good. If you could share this post, that would be great. I would appreciate that. The more people that see it, the more views, the more opportunities there are to do this show in the future. So if you could share the post, if you got friends, you got other friends that like Georgia, like SEC, that might like some of the content, hit the share button, share it with them. Let them know that we're out there. We have a daily show called Dog Nation Daily every day at 10 a.m. Brandon Adams is the host of that. He's Mr. Dog Nation. He is the official voice of the fan. I'll do another show. Well, let me back up here. So Connor will have a video up tomorrow. I'll do a show Sunday night. Connor will do a show Monday night. I'll do a midday show Tuesday with Mark Richt. He's the scheduled guest right now. Jeff Santel does a Wednesday night show on recruiting, which is phenomenal. Probably the most information-packed show that you're going to find anywhere on the internet. And then Thursday night, we do our Cover 4, Thursday afternoon. So there's a full slate of schedule on our Dog Nation page, on our Facebook page. You can check it out. You'll see a lot of other content. I recommend the Cover 4 if you're a Georgia fan. I will warn you, it does get controversial, and some people do get irritated. I kind of felt like people got mad at me. I kind of got put in my place. I had to kind of quiet down and sit in my little corner because I had some thoughts about Justin Fields. I didn't think he knew the offense as well as Jake Fromm. He didn't, okay? He didn't, okay? He really did. Not as a freshman. What he did at Ohio State doesn't mean he would have done it here. And he was only a freshman when he was here. He was a second-year player when he did it there. So, get that out of my system. I'm going to call it a night. I want to thank you all for joining me again. I want to encourage you to be safe, make measured decisions, try to be tolerant of others. Right now is the time everybody's kind of stressed, right? Be aware that you're stressed and go out of your way to be nice, right? Play it forward. Do your best not to let this situation bring you down. Stay positive. Stay focused on where you want to be. We will get through this. I promise it's going to happen. Not as far as football season, everything looks good right now, but there's a lot of things in place, a lot of hurdles, but there is reason for optimism. All right. So everyone stay positive. Thanks for joining me. It's been a great Friday night show, and you guys are always so supportive. It makes me want to do this over and over and over again. So, hey, have a great weekend, and I'll see you Sunday night.